Support for Louisiana, the state we're in, is provided by
Entergy Louisiana is strengthening our power grid throughout the state. We're reinforcing infrastructure to prepare for stronger storms, reduce outages, and respond quicker when you do need us, because together we power life.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.
It's been a full week of the special legislative session, from congressional redistricting to a push to end Louisiana's open primary system. We'll bring you the details. Plus, Louisiana was frozen this week from road and school closures and more. We'll tell you how the state was coping with the cold. All this and more coming up on Louisiana, the state we're in. Hello, everyone. I'm Karen LeBlanc. Kara St. Cyr is out this evening. Governor Jeff Landry makes a major announcement. We traveled to Lake Charles, where he revealed news of a new bridge. The governor announced plans for a new I-10 Calcasieu River Bridge on his first visit to Southwest Louisiana as the official head of the state. He attended a Chamber of Commerce banquet held at the Golden Nugget Casino Resort in Lake Charles, accompanied by the new head of Louisiana's Department of Transportation and Development and members of the Southwest Louisiana Legislative Delegation. The governor says the bridge has a 7-year build-out timeline and promises to lower tolls.
We're going to get the same bridge and over 5 miles of new interstate and frontage roads. But the cost is going to be 25% less. The tolls across the board have been dramatically reduced, in my opinion. They've been reduced by some 26%.
Governor Landry says he's also negotiated a 15% equity position for the area so that when the bridge has $1 of profit, the region gets 15 cents on that dollar. With less than 2 weeks under his belt, Governor Jeff Landry is beginning his term with an ambitious special session. The 57th governor of Louisiana intends to tackle the redistricting controversy before the clock runs out on January 30th, as well as reform Louisiana's party voting system. LPB's Kara St. Cyr gives you the rundown on the special session taking place this week at the Capitol.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Governor of Louisiana, the Honorable Jeff Landry.
As one of his first acts as Governor of Louisiana, Jeff Landry called a special session aimed at redrawing congressional districts, a task lawmakers have labored over for more than a year and a half.
We are here today because the federal courts have ordered us to perform our job. Our job, which is not finished. Our job that our own laws direct us to complete. And our job that our individual oaths promise we would perform. To that end, I ask you to join me in adopting the redistricting maps that are proposed.
Disagreements over the congressional redistricting began back in 2022 when lawmakers drafted a congressional map with only one majority black district of 6 total. John Bel Edwards vetoed the map, calling it an unfair representation of Louisiana's population, which is 33% black.
While I'm disappointed, I can only tell you I would be very much more disappointed had I been complicit in having a map that I think is so unfair and unjust enacted into law.
After a veto override session, a failed special session, and a Supreme Court precedent, lawmakers have until January 30th to draw the map in accordance with the Voting Rights Act, which means providing a second majority black district. Plaintiffs who filed a lawsuit against the current map are optimistic that a map with the additional district will pass without conflict.
So either they're going to do the right thing or not, but we're going to be here in good faith to be able to fight for what we know is right. And much like the governor said, to do the work that they get to do. This is their last chance to have their voices to actually draw this map on behalf of the constituents of the state of Louisiana.
If the map isn't redrawn properly by the deadline, the case will go to trial February 6th and be redrawn by a district judge.
This is about being on the right side of history, and that it doesn't matter what party you're in. You know, like the math is the math. You know, a third of the state is African American. We have 6 congressional districts, so there should be 2.
Senate will come to order.
A new map has already advanced to the House, this time creating a second black majority district that includes a large portion of Baton Rouge through Thibodaux. The proposed map changes Congressman Garret Graves' district, almost doubling the black population from 23% to 54%. Graves himself opposes the change, which could effectively push him out of office. Yet Louisiana State Senate easily passed it.
Without objection.
Redistricting was the primary reason for this special session, but it's hardly the only high-profile item on the agenda. Landry has proposed changing Louisiana's campaign finance laws, and he wants to alter the way the state selects Supreme Court justices.
Our Supreme Court districts have been redistricted by this legislature only one time in 103 years. The result is that districts are grossly unbalanced, with 2 districts twice as large as another one. Last year, I negotiated a scheduling order with the plaintiffs in one of those cases, allowing the legislature, allowing you all, a chance to willingly handle our own affairs.
But perhaps the second biggest item on the agenda is the shift of the so-called jungle primary.
If you look around, there's probably no perfect way of doing it because so many states have so many different ways of doing elections. We have been in what's called a jungle primary for most of the last 50 years. And we're kind of unique compared to the rest of the country.
Louisiana's jungle primary was established in 1970 under Governor Edwin Edwards' administration. It opens primary elections to all voters, regardless of political orientation. Whichever candidate wins the primary won't need to advance to a runoff to take office. Landry is proposing a closed primary, which means voters can only vote within their party before the runoff in the general election.
I think the argument a lot of voters would make is the system that we have now works pretty well. I can vote for anybody I want to, whether I'm a Republican, Democrat, or no party, and that's just fine with most people, I imagine. The other argument is that it's a party primary, and the parties should be the ones to choose their nominees or their candidates to go on to the general election. So you can kind of argue it either way.
Lawmakers have a short amount of time, just 8 days, to assess all of these major proposals and make decisions that'll have lasting impacts on Louisiana.
Louisiana Congressman Garret Graves, a Republican representing the 6th District of Louisiana, has become a flashpoint in the debate over how to draw Louisiana's congressional map. Governor Jeff Landry is backing a congressional map that would turn Graves' district into a black majority seat, effectively pushing the congressman out of office. I talked with Congressman Graves about his political future as he weighs in on what's at stake with congressional redistricting. How do you feel about Governor Jeff Landry's backed proposed congressional redistricting map that essentially eliminates your district as you know it?
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for the opportunity to join you, and I appreciate the question. Look, so I think what's most important is that congressional maps and districts shouldn't be about an individual person or incumbent protection. Like, if things don't work out for me, I'll be fine and I'll land on my feet. One of the fundamental flaws with the map that has been put out is that it takes the capital region and it splits it up into 4 different congressional districts. And what that does, it may sound, oh, wow, we're going to have 4 people representing us. But what it does is it actually dilutes the role of the capital region, and it dilutes sort of the priorities of the capital region.
Do you support the creation of a second black majority voter congressional district?
So I think what you need to do in a case like this is, and I've heard people say, well, look, nearly 1/3 of the population of the state is black, therefore at least 1/3 of the seats need to be black. What you've got to do is you have to apply the criteria that's in the law. And you're exactly right. One of the criteria is race. That's one of the factors. You're not allowed to split or dilute race. And so there's no question that the New Orleans area has a high concentration of minorities, as does some areas of the Baton Rouge region. And so, look, I'm not a demographer. I think what they need to do is just take an honest approach in applying the principles of compactness, of communities of interest, and of racial considerations. And if that results in majority minority districts, then that's what it is. But I think where you get into trouble is you start coming in and gerrymandering. And just to remind you, in the 90s, the Supreme Court of the United States stepped in not once but twice and threw out districts that were racially gerrymandered.
Do you believe that this proposed congressional map that the governor is backing, the one that changes your congressional district, do you believe that's gerrymandering?
I don't think that it passes the laugh test, much less any true jurisprudence or legal principles for redistricting. And you know, I know that some folks can say that it eliminates our district. I would actually argue that it actually eliminates all the districts. I mean, it makes changes all over, and then it certainly doesn't meet the criteria, the legal criteria for redrawing maps. I think that the map that we ran under in 2022, I like that district a lot. I think it follows the mapping principles, the redistricting principles. And, you know, one of the things that I'm really proud of in regard to performance of our team is that nearly 81% of the voters in that district voted for us, which was the highest in the Louisiana delegation, showing that we're actually delivering on priorities for the folks that live in those 12 parishes, which I couldn't be more proud of, being able to have that kind of support, despite the fact that there were Republicans, Democrats, and independents and others who were all on the ballot at the same time.
Do you believe the legislature is best suited to redraw the congressional map, or should that be left up to the courts?
I think that the legislature should, and just quickly tell you why. There is one place in the Constitution of the United States where it reserves specifically for state legislatures a responsibility or authority, and it is this. And I don't like the idea of courts stepping in and drawing maps, but there's not a mandate that Louisiana draw a new map today, which unfortunately is a misnomer that's been repeated in the press a good bit. But I want to be clear. I don't think there is any scenario where that map that passed the Senate gets through a court. I don't think it even begins to comply with any of the three criteria that are required by law.
We are in the midst of a special session dealing with redistricting, but the governor has also pushed some other initiatives, one of which is the proposed elimination of our open primary system as we know it. How do you feel about that?
I am absolutely opposed. I think it is an awful idea, and I'll explain why. Look, one of the greatest things, Louisiana does have a unique system with our open, or sometimes known as a jungle primary. But one of the greatest things about it is that when we run for office, we get to go out and try and attract the votes of every single person in the district, everyone. And it doesn't matter if these people are very liberal or very conservative. These are the people that at the end of the day, if we win, we're representing them. So why would you spend half of your election time ostracizing half of the voters and only trying to be attractive to the other half? I think it's un-American. I think it's contrary to freedom and liberty. And I think it is an awful idea.
Congressman Graves, I want to wrap up our interview by asking you if there's any news that you'd like to share with our viewers and your constituents.
Yeah, look, I just want to highlight what I mentioned before. We're at a place now in Louisiana's delegation to where, for the first time in any state in American history, we have the Speaker of the House, we have the Majority Leader, and within a year, if I play my cards right, and if ultimately these maps reflect some degree of sanity, I could be chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which is not just roads, bridges, traffic, airports, transit, things like that, but it's things like FEMA and disasters. It's things like the Corps of Engineers and coastal coastal restoration, hurricane protection, flood control. It's pipelines, it's economic development, it's Coast Guard, it's rivers and ports. So really, really excited about the opportunities that are on the horizon for our delegation and really helping to address some of Louisiana's long-standing problems like coastal restoration, the resiliency of our communities, addressing some of the worst traffic jams in America in Baton Rouge and in New Orleans, getting a new bridge on I-10 in Lake Charles, a lot of these things that really have been problems for decades. So excited about that and excited about the progress we've been able to make over the past few years, but appreciate the opportunity to join you today.
All right, Congressman Garret Graves, thank you so much. And I guess it's back to work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Icy roads and frozen pipes were a reality for much of the Deep South as an Arctic blast pushed frigid air over the majority of the country. Though Arctic blasts aren't exactly rare weather occurrences, experts say we could see these weather patterns more often as the climate continues to change. Kara St. Cyr wraps up Louisiana's brief encounter with the severe cold and talks with experts about the frequency of these weather events.
A national cold snap hit the United States, crossing state lines from Maine to Louisiana.
A record-breaking Arctic cold snap sweeping across much of the country.
The dangerous cold affecting tens of millions of you from the Northwest to the Southern Plains.
Snow, ice, and brutal temperatures stretching across the middle of the country.
Here in the Deep South, Louisiana handled her brisk encounter with the cold using a bit of humor and sarcasm. Social media was buzzing with content from all over the state as residents wondered how much longer they could brave the cold.
I'm from Louisiana. Of course, when it snows, they're gonna shut down the roads. We can't even drive when it ain't snowing.
You know, I live in Louisiana, not Alaska.
But in some parts of the state, the severe weather was no laughing matter. In the northern region around Shreveport, temperatures dropped to 16 degrees Tuesday night, narrowly beating out a previous record low of 17 degrees from 1972. Baton Rouge and New Orleans fared slightly better with lows of 19 and 24 degrees, but streets were still iced and slick, prompting several closures of roads and bridges. Rodney Mallett with DOTD says the agency anticipated these incidents when they started preparing for the blast last week.
What makes Louisiana unique is we have the third most bridge deck space in the country. What that means is we have a lot of long, wide bridges. And you have seen the sign that says bridges will ice before the road. And that's exactly what happens when we have the right temperatures and right precipitation.
Monday night also saw multiple wrecks. State police investigated a string of accidents along I-10, with a major crash reported near the Atchafalaya Basin. Even though the weather is showing signs of warming, Mallett says DOTD wants to be sure it's safe before opening the roads back up.
There's a lot of factors that go into it. You know, people will say, it's 34 degrees, which I don't think it is 34 up there. I'm not real sure. How come you're not opening it? Well, a bridge is oftentimes going to be colder than the regular air temperature because it's elevated. It doesn't have anything underneath it. And if it's over water, then it's going to be colder longer. So we can't make that guess. There's too much that goes into it.
The temperatures are expected to even out as the week progresses, but weather experts say it's possible that we could see a smaller cold snap as we move into the weekend.
The forecasts are showing, kind of warms up a little bit here, and then we get another pulse over the weekend.
Andrew Pershing is the vice president for science at Climate Central. He says that sometimes Arctic blasts can cause wave patterns to lock in place, seemingly repeating the cold temperatures, even in the south. But on a broader scale, Pershing says it's likely we could start seeing these patterns emerge in southern states more often.
There does seem to be some evidence that we are getting more of these kind of cold air outbreaks, especially these persistent ones that come into the country. And there's some speculation that that may actually be due to global warming, warming up conditions in the Arctic. But this is still very new science at the moment.
Can you explain how global warming can contribute to it getting colder, especially in southern areas?
The hypothesis is that essentially, if you're warming up the Arctic faster than the rest of places further south, you decrease the temperature difference across that band, and it allows the jet stream to wander more and allows it to become a little bit unhinged. And so that's the hypothesis. And there's certainly evidence in the data that we're seeing those sorts of things, but it's certainly a new mechanism that that the atmospheric scientists are trying to really run down.
Like Pershing said, we'll see a slight dip in temperatures toward the weekend, and after that, the weather patterns will stabilize to temperatures we recognize.
From hashtags to social media memes, here's what's trending around the state. Okay, kudos to Louisiana State University dance team, the Tiger Girls. They won a national dance championship for their hip hop routine, and it went viral. Just really fun. And also, that championship also garnered an NIL deal for the Tigers girl dance captain. So check it out. You can find that video online a bunch of places. That was at the 2024 Universal Dance Association National Championship held at the ESPN Wide World of Sports in Orlando. Okay, Louisiana was frozen this week, as we said, and boy, did it spark a bunch of social memes. But there was a video that went viral, and this is of the Olympic gold medal winner, Oksana Bayul, who posted a video ice skating in her backyard in Shreveport with her daughter. Now, you might remember Oksana, she beat out Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding. This went viral. People are like, oh my gosh, there is an Olympian ice skater living in good old Louisiana. She was thrilled, obviously, to have that ice in her backyard. Also, a bunch of other memes, including frozen crawfish and a ice truck carrying king cake sugar to de-ice the roads. The New Orleans Jazz Fest announced its musical lineup for the 2024 festival. Now, we knew that the Rolling Stones were headlining, but there is an impressive lineup of musical acts, including Chris Stapleton. Go to the website to check it out. The Cabildo Museum is emblematic of the New Orleans French Quarter and a crown jewel in Louisiana's State Museum collection. It's one of the state's most photographed buildings, where New Orleans past and present converge. I'm taking you on a tour of the museum to discover why the Cabildo attracts international dignitaries from presidents to royalty as an ambassador for Louisiana's art, culture, and history. Musicians and tourists mingle on a typical day in front of the Cabildo Museum, a popular attraction and gathering spot in the French Quarter's Jackson Square. It's one of the most photographed buildings in Louisiana, where New Orleans past and present converge.
It's really one of the greatest objects, if not the greatest objects, in our collection. This is such an important edifice, not only in New Orleans history, but for the whole region.
Stephen McClansky is our tour guide as we walk these hallowed halls, retracing the footsteps of famous people and pivotal moments in history.
This is one of the most significant historic rooms and one of the most historic and significant buildings in the city. In 1803, this was a place where some of the transfer papers that sort of executed the Louisiana Purchase took place right here, right in this space. And similarly, this was also once the home for the Louisiana Supreme Court. And in this very space is where the Plessy versus Ferguson case was adjudicated right here.
Over the years, the Cabildo has hosted many dignitaries and royals. In recent history, French President Emmanuel Macron and the King and Queen of Spain.
Right out these windows, for example, President Harrison, when he visited New Orleans, gave his hello to the adoring crowds below. And similarly, General Lafayette, the Marquis de Lafayette, one of the great heroes of the American Revolution, when he returned to the city on his grand tour in 1825, he also addressed and welcomed the crowds from those very doors.
The Cabildo gets its name from the Spanish word for council and dates back to 1795, built under Spanish rule. The Cabildo served as the center of New Orleans government before burning to the ground in 1788. It was rebuilt and in 1908 became a Louisiana State Museum. The Cabildo caught fire again in 1988, closing for renovations until 1994. Today, the building features 3 floors of exhibits. This second floor focuses on Louisiana's history, including the Battle of New Orleans. The ground floor is an homage to New Orleans, with memorabilia tied to Crescent City nostalgia. And the third floor showcases limited-run exhibits, such as this retrospective by artist Hunt Slonim. He's known for his signature bunny rabbit paintings.
I often say that a museum is a place where history and legacy intersect. We're looking back, but we're also thinking about our future. And one of the ways to do that is to analyze our present. And since Hunt Slonim is such an important contemporary artist, those 3 parts fit together quite well. So he's famous for his bunnies and his butterflies, and though featured in this exhibition are some extraordinary landscapes that he's done of New Orleans and of Louisiana.
The Cabildo attaches to another historic structure called the Arsenal, which hosts changing exhibits. And on the day we visited, there are works on display by New Orleans photographer George Monnier and self-taught Louisiana folklore painter Clementine Hunter.
We have an interesting little highlight to the show as well, because not only is the room filled with the authentic works of Clementine Hunter, but there's an interesting story to be told about some elaborate forgeries which were made about her work, but uncovered by the FBI.
More than 2 centuries later, the Cabildo attracts a crowd for its Spanish colonial architecture and French Quarter energy, standing next to its architectural twin, the Presbytère, and alongside St. Louis Cathedral. Together, they are a trio of national historic landmarks and enduring symbols of Louisiana. That's our show for this week. Remember, you can watch anything LPB anytime wherever you are with our LPB app. You can catch LPB news and public affairs shows, as well as other Louisiana programs you've come to enjoy over the years. And please, like us on Facebook, X, and Instagram. For everyone at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Karen LeBlanc. Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Support for Louisiana, the state we're in, is provided by
Entergy Louisiana is strengthening our power grid throughout the state. We're reinforcing infrastructure to prepare for stronger storms, reduce outages, and respond quicker when you do need us, because together we power life.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana.
And by Visit Baton Rouge and the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and viewers like you. Thank you.